Ni hao, marhaba, bonjour, hola, hello. That's all the languages I know. Bitam. Hello, and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. I'm your host, Paul. Yes. Okay. So if you're listening in in the car, please focus on the road. It's very important. If you're listening elsewhere, crank up that dial, turn up the volume, put your headphones in, and let's crack on and let's listen to it. Okay, I have some notes to look professional. I've done some research, not a lot, but I've done some research. So, as always, unedited, unscripted, see, unscripted, natural, native English. And in this case, it's British English. All right, okay. So, the topic we got today, you've probably already read it, is should you teach English language to your children? Should you teach another language to your children? And if so, how? Okay, so we're going to dive into this and unpack it a little bit and have some thoughts and ideas. So, just looking at a study here, the benefits of bilingual from a young age. So this is what they say. I've read a few studies. The last one was really deep and abstract and difficult, and they never actually gave you a good conclusion. And I was like, oh, anyway. But this one is a bit more interesting. Better concentration, top 10. Better concentration, arithmetic and problem solving. Number 3, creative and ability to hypothesize. 4, better language and vocabulary. Okay, that makes sense. Brain exercise, number 5. Number 6, better communication. Okay. Number 7, better memory. Number 8, faster response. Number 9, improved social life and better family connections. Okay, and number 10, open-mindedness. Wow. Yes, that does seem a good list of reasons to teach your children another language from a young age. Now, if my children were young again, I would definitely look at showing them and trying to spark some curiosity about a second language. I've seen it through my students, I've seen it through other people I know, I've seen it through children I met whilst traveling. Knowing a second language or a third or fourth language really does make a young person's brain really expand. Now, I wouldn't say it's at the loss of creativity or being young and imaginative and enjoying their childhood. I would say it helps. Learning another language is not an easy thing to do, but it can be fun. Some children can really enjoy it. Not every child's going to love it. Not every child's going to want to do it. But if it's natural within your home anyway, then it will be picked up, it will become normal, and anything that's normal or familiar becomes easier and becomes kind of liked. So, bringing in a second language is definitely a bonus for young children, in my opinion. All right. Okay. So how would you do this? How would you bring in a second language? How would you teach your child another language? How would you go about it? There's lots of different books. There's lots of different theories and ideas. How would I go about it? Okay. How would I teach another language to my child if my child was young again? All right. So I would use it 3 or 4 times a day. 3 or 4 times a day, I would be speaking in a second language, whether it's my second language or one I'm learning, because children often learn by osmosis. All right. So the key really is sparking curiosity and fun. All right. Curiosity is what drives us to learn. And if you can get that in a child, that curiosity and some fun, you're on a winning ticket, eh? Winning ticket. Curiosity and fun. Now, that might sound like a tall order, but you'd be surprised at how much resources there are in the world, on the internet, on Pinterest, on all these different social media apps and Facebook groups. There's a lot of resources. So you don't have to build and make everything yourself from scratch. You can find stuff out there. But the drive, motivation, happiness has to come from the adult. All right? You've got to keep it positive. You can't be using it as a punishment or something to take away. It has to be a positive, productive drive forward, all right, with fun. Okay, even if it's just engaging with some family time together, you know, that quality time, just speaking in a second language for fun. Okay, right, so that's number one priority. Curiosity and fun. All right, you got to bring that motivation. You will be the teacher. All right, you've got to bring that curiosity, that motivation, and the fun. That's number one. All right. So what I would do, I would start by building a vocabulary, building up your child's vocabulary. Just constantly going over and over and over so many different and interesting things, whether it's images or actual tactile objects that you know the words for. Just doing that with your child. It's the same as the child mimicking what you say to it in their first language, whether they're holding a bottle or a cup, you know, or food. If you can have that tactile object, it will impress upon the child sooner. Okay. Repeat only the correct responses. There's nothing quicker to quench a child's knowledge or thirst or motivation than to tell them they're doing it wrong, you know, or belittle them or be aggressive towards them. Oh, I've told you already, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is what we do in schools. We say, they may say something like, I dog walk, or the walk the dog I. And as the teacher, you would say, oh, you walk the dog. Excellent. Yes, it's good if you walk the dog. And you don't have to be too obvious about it. You just have to repeat it a couple of times. And their brain, they're very, very clever, these children. We've got to give them credit for how clever they are. As a sponge soaking up this learning, this knowledge, just repeating it once or twice correctly, they go, oh, that was different. They want me to say it this way. That is so subtle and so easy. All right, building that vocabulary. So make games around the house, and then talk about like around the house. You know, their bedroom, their bed, their teddy, their pajamas, things like this. You know, making it a bit of a game. It's really gonna make for example, make their evening routine a lot better because they can speak it pajamas in another language, bed, pillow, all these things, teddies. That can be part of your evening routine where you're getting quality time with your child, you know, focused and eye contact and cuddles, with bringing in these other words. All right, so you both are doing something together in another language, and the child is searching and seeking I forgot the word now. Appraisal. The child wants you to be happy with them. So only repeat it positively back to them. So I would talk about bedtime routines, and I would talk about your daily routine, and I would talk about the vocabulary about around the house and the roof and the cat and the dog. And then I'd move on to things like about at school, you know, and then I would talk about food, you know, and just build up that vocabulary. Clothes, colors, days of the week, months of the year, seasons, numbers, you know. We all learn at school, un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, you know, it's so easy. And then there's little songs, nursery rhymes. Even now I listen to Spanish songs because it's something I want to get into my head. You know, I got some real favorite Spanish songs. And if I'm in a Spanish country and I'm playing that song because I enjoy it, people will come over and they're, oh, you listen to this. You listen to Spanish music. I'll be like, yeah, it's nice. I like it. oh, right. And then it builds a conversation. It makes a connection. Okay, so songs and nursery rhymes, really, really good for bringing in that vocabulary. And also understanding the rhythm and the cadence of conversation for different languages. Subtle little things like this that the child doesn't need to know the names for cadence and the rhythm and the way the people speak. It's just enjoy. Enjoy hearing the song and dancing around the room, just making it fun and engaging. So that's where I would start. I would start with vocabulary. Then I would move on to infinitives and preposition games. So, like the cat sat on the mat. Silly little things like this. And again, repeating it correctly to the child. Repeating it correctly to the child. Can be very, very easy. Infinitives and prepositions. So simple. I think sounding out the alphabet and moving on to words would be a good next step. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. This is not the best list in the world or the best plan in the world. It's just what I would do from my experience of learning languages. Been learning 2 languages over the last sort of 5 years. And this is what I would do. Like I said, curiosity, fun, motivation. Then I would build vocabulary over months and months and months, even years. All right. So this isn't the sort of thing that you do over a weekend. This is something you take on board for probably a few years, especially to get that interest and motivation for the child as they get older to want to learn more on their own. So like I said, building the vocabulary. Then infinitives and prepositions. The cat on the mat. Under, on top, inside, behind, next to. All these words can be very simple to put them into games. Like the hamster is under the box. The hamster is in the box, behind it. You know what I mean? It's really, really simple. And infinitives, there's not many, is there? The, a, an. It's kind of it, really. The, a, an. I think that's it. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments below. Prepositions. That's where I would go next. Sounding out the alphabet and moving on to words. Again, we all did this in our own language. We all did this when we were young, and we teach it to our children. So that's what I would do next. Going through the alphabet songs, and then like the vowels, the 5 vowels on your fingers, that kind of thing, and really make lots of fun out of it and games out of it. But sounding out the words really helps with the next step of ingesting words in a written form. So you can see that, maybe some of the books and some of the pictures you've already seen of a cat on a mat. Some of those things, it feels like the next obvious progression. Okay. Building a library of adjectives next. Building a library of adjectives. So I'm sure you all know lots and lots of different adjectives, but to give that over to the child with the bright, blue, exciting wheel and the order in which we put them in, starting with opinion, blah, 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 blah. But just having fun, explaining all different types of adjective, the fluffy dog, or the excited cat, whatever. And then I would bring in awareness, which you've been doing anyway, I'd imagine. Awareness of sentence structure. So we all know that we've been saying the cat sat on the mat and repeated that to the child again and again and again. But the next part of the sentence structure is multiple sentences. And then like a paragraph. So building that up in chunks is very similar to stories and breaking stories down into parts. Stories are very, very beneficial to bring in, obviously at a young, early age or early in the child's career of learning another language. bringing those stories in really, really do help make it engaging and connecting. All right, helping the imagination. All right. Then eventually I would move on to grammar and punctuation. Just so when the child is reading the story in this second or third language themselves, once they're reading it themselves, they'll know when to stop, take a breath, pause, and when to turn the page. Because the punctuation and grammar will really help the child to read out loud. That's another really good aspect. All right, so then the next thing I've got is vary the reading material. So books are brilliant and nursery rhymes are brilliant, but at some point books feel a little bit stagnant, a little bit still. And if you want to progress from stories and different types of material, looking at comics. Comics are really good because of, again, the visualization and kind of the pace it moves forward. You know, comics are really, they're just great. Comics are great. Toy adverts. Now, you've probably not thought about this, but toy adverts for that second or third language can really be interesting and motivating the child to want to know what it says. What's that word? What's that word? I like this picture. I like that toy. They can bring in a new motivation and energy. Jokes. Children love to laugh. We all know this. Children love to laugh. So if you can get a joke book in that second or third language, that would really, really help the child have a lot of fun and connecting it with other people, maybe other peers at school, having a joke in another language. And then also this child gets to communicate with other people in the family, go around the house, going, you know, what's this knock knock joke or that joke, and get more praise from other members of the family. It may become irritating after a while, but it's definitely a positive thing to get the child to learn and understand jokes. Jokes can be very complicated. So once jokes are understood and utilized in everyday conversation and within the household to garner some fun and happiness, then it's a positive thing. It really does help brighten up the day. All right, what else did I get? Articles. Reading different articles. So depending on the age of your child, getting them to read different material, different types of articles can really help expand their mind. You know, they might only be interested in comics, but if you could get them to look at an advert for planting vegetables. So for example, I don't know, maybe some crest or some fruit or something they can eat, something they can connect with. Maybe growing a tomato plant. All right, if you can get your child into reading an advert about a tomato plant, then your child might think, oh, I would like to eat a tomato and I can grow it for myself. That may spark some more interest in another subject, another topic. Okay, so it's not just that hobby. It could be any hobby. Maybe swimming, maybe football. You know, so you could have a comic with football. So moving away from superheroes to a comic about football. And then maybe your child wants to see an advert about buying a football. And then you can actually have a football and play the game football. And maybe read an article about their favorite football players or their favorite football team. And again, this works for girls as well, or you know, whether they like football or not, or hockey, or any other sport that a girl may be into. So jokes, articles, comics, toy adverts, different material. You may even find that some schools have like a children's newspaper or a children's paper. So in the UK, we have a thing called Newsround, which is the news based for children. So it's easier to understand, it's much more colourful, there's more breaks in it. and the grammar and vocabulary are dumbed down a little bit, so it's not overwhelming for children. So that's another good thing about learning English, I guess. News round for children. All right then. I said earlier about reading out loud, but if you've got something interesting that your child really wants to read or share, get them to read out loud to everybody in the house, or just practice reading out loud, because that will help for school later on, whether it's in the first language or a second, third language. Reading out loud really helps the child fully pronunciate a word. Recognize the grammar and the punctuation where I said before they stop and breathe and pause. Okay, and even when they're reading out loud, they may even pick up on onomatopoeia, where they may say woof, woof, ew, and make up some of the sounds from the story they're reading out loud, or whatever it is they're reading. Actually making those sounds brings the article a bit more alive and allows the speaker to engage more with the listener in a more interesting way. So reading out loud, again, is a very positive thing that can only help. Right. Now, this one is a bit different. Most people may not have think of this one, but getting your child to teach another child, or to teach you a lesson in that language, whether it's English, Spanish, French, German, getting your child to teach you something, maybe something like preposition or countable and uncountable. Some simple lesson that your child has to teach to another child or another person is really a very clever task to get the child to think of how the other person may have a lower, lesser understanding. Now, Albert Einstein once said, if you cannot teach it to a child, you do not understand it yourself. That's a very profound message. If you cannot teach it to a child, you do not know it yourself. So that would be a very good lesson, and it would give your child confidence and help their self-esteem by getting them to teach another child or another adult. So they get that happy empowerment, that happiness that they've been able to impart their knowledge to somebody else. That would be very, very good for the child, you know, in many ways. All right. Lastly, write in different styles and tones and formats. So if your child is very fluent in their own language and they're practicing a second language, when they get to the level of being able to write a letter, for example, or an email, or maybe they have to do something for school, they have to write a poster. All right. Maybe that poster is emotive. Maybe that poster is just giving information, like the village festival is happening on Saturday at this location at the hall. All right, so getting your child to think about different formats and writing with a different tone and attitude. Maybe they're writing an email to a company that did a bad service. You know, getting your child to understand different formats is really going to, again, expand their reading and writing abilities to be able to express and communicate what they need to get across to the other person. That's a very good skill to learn for any language. So that's kind of my list. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. It's not the only list. It's not the best list. But that's kind of the way that I would break things down in teaching, say, my child, if they were young again, to understand a second language. All right. If you've got any thoughts, any ideas, any experiences, put them down in the comments. Let me know. What do you think about children learning another language? Do you think it's good for them? Do you think there's any drawbacks? What's the downsides of learning a second language? Are there any? Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, thanks for listening. Remember, have fun learning, otherwise you're not going to learn. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.